I started doing robotics in high school. I was on 3309, the FIRST from Southern California. I helped them earn their first Chairman's Award, which was really exciting, at the Los Angeles Regional in 2016. So essentially, just a little bit about me. I like to ride my bike. I have a bearded dragon. My mom's Cambodian, my dad's white. That's my sister, who also does robotics. That's my friend Ginger at Chezzy Champs. Everybody knows Chezzy Champs? Off-season competition, 2 weekends from now. A lot of fun. So I just love doing things. I love being active, and I love robotics. So that's why I'm here. The point of this talk is just to help you figure out ways to tell your story. Because the better you are at sharing where you are, who you are, what you want to achieve, and the better you are at doing that, and helping others tell their story, the more opportunities you have to accomplish your own aspirations. Because essentially communication is one of the most, if not the most valuable skill you can have, other than basic problem solving. Just because if you can't explain those ideas or be able to talk about your own thought processes, then all the work that you did is for nothing. There are a lot of problems in the world today. Communicating your own solutions to those ideas is an incredibly powerful tool, especially in the world of engineering. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. That's why I mentor 971. I mentor to help create well-rounded individuals who are both good at all the beep, boop, boop, look at it, I can do all this cool math and CAD, but I can also have a conversation about it. So that's essentially the point of this presentation. It's just to share things that I've learned, share abstract connections between basic patterns in literature and communication and applying them to robotics. So my friends give me a lot of trouble because I am notorious for not getting to the point. So this is how I think that I tell a story. Oh, this is the start and this is the end. But this is really how it ends up happening, right? There's a lot of details, and it's this big convoluted path. So this is me helping you figure out how to cut through all of this to share what makes you unique, what makes your team unique. Because at competitions, you will speak to judges. There are awards where you write and you have to talk about the path that your team took to building your robot and you took to being a student on that particular team. So the more clarity that you can have, despite all of the turns and twists that you took in your path, will make a stronger connection to your audience. So I think both of these are wrong. This should be more exciting, but this should be more simple. Does that make any sense? And so my presentation will follow sort of a path to getting a happy medium between the two. So there are 3 aspects of every story that I will talk about. What is your story? What does that mean? What am I gonna do? Blah, like the content, the meat. And then the how is, how are you gonna do it? What are your methods? What strategies can you use? How do you actually find the people to share your story with? And then last but not least, the why. Why is this story important? Why does it matter? Why is this more than just me providing a description? Why does it take this entire path? So I go into the what, the how, and the why. I'm a very question-oriented person, so I tried to ask myself, how am I going to figure this out? And so working backwards from the questions is also a really helpful strategy in terms of problem solving. Like, how do I communicate this? Or why would a person think X, Y? So just a brief outline of what I will discuss. But also keep in mind that I am not a professional or anything of the sort. Okay, I'm a college student. this is only what I've gathered in my time of mentoring. So I have experience, I am proud of my accomplishments, but I am nowhere near to where I want to be, and I'm still learning. So this GIF kind of described my emotions when I was like, wow, am I qualified to talk about this? But that's also imposter syndrome. So don't let imposter syndrome get you. But just as a disclaimer. So feel free to argue with me. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong. I like a good debate. But just a disclaimer. Okay, so now we're going to go into the what. Why is this? What is the content? What are we going to talk about? I mean, what is my story and how do I figure that out? So every hero takes a journey, right? This is something you learn in like a literature class. There's a problem. There are problems to solving the problem. You want to give up. Somebody helps you get there, and then you solve it. And then it goes through again. It's kind of like the engineering design process, right? Like you have a situation, you have prototypes to it, you refine the prototypes, you come up with them, something breaks in that process, and then you fix it. And it's just over and over again. And writing and storytelling is also a very similar process. This is where you have your ideas. This is where your ideas kind of get more solidified. And then this is where you fix them. So this is also, but also in relation to telling your story, this is where you figure out, okay, this is what happened. This is a better way of telling that. This is a challenge we faced, and this is how we accomplished it. So while it also takes the cyclical nature of the process itself as while the process itself is cyclical, your story can also be cyclical in nature. Because you have like the intro, your problems, the solution, and so forth. Does that make sense? And it was a little convoluted, but okay. Feel free to pause me if you have any questions or anything too. Yes?
I just want to add something that being in the professional world, when you're applying for management jobs and you get interviewed, they want you to tell the story. When they ask you questions, they're looking for you to tell you, they call them the STAR, like situation, task, action, result. What are all those things? And it's very similar to, I think, what you're trying to convey to us as well. So I just want to share that it's very applicable to a professional.
Yeah, so also just to emphasize, this is the meat of the problem. The challenges that you had to overcome in that process. And so when I first saw this, I was like, oh, this is a really good picture, but I don't like that this is a straight line. Because in the challenges and temptations, the more complicated the story gets, this line really looks like this. Does that make any sense? Like, it's a squiggly. Like, in this process of like, oh, I think I found it, then you just get messed up more along the way. And this is where all the this is like Game of Thrones, like Game of Thrones still, for all the different storylines, I don't know if anybody knows Game of Thrones, but probably too young for this audience, but essentially there are all these different stories, all these different characters, and all these different paths, but it still follows this journey, right? But what makes a good story is how convoluted these life's ups and downs take for the characters involved. And essentially, we are the characters acting out this story. So also with social media too, because social media can be such a poor medium for storytelling. In social media, you only see the increases in the process or in somebody's life. You only see it it seems like everything's a straight trajectory from, oh, this is where I started, this is where I am. But in reality, I think it's more of like this, oh, wow, what's happening here? Like, I was here, I was higher here, but now I'm way lower than I was when I started out. And so the better you are, I think the better we are at being able to capture that entire process will make a better story. So this is where, when you're talking to judges, this is where you're talking about, oh my gosh, I remember when this prototype broke, but we were able to fix X, Y, Z prototype by doing A, B, and C. So those are the peaks and the lows in terms of how this applies to robotics. Okay, does anybody seen The Matrix? No? Yeah? Okay, cool. I was a little worried that it was too old of a movie, but this is about the characters. This is about this slide is I'm not a very like text oriented. I really like pictures, so I figured like the contrast of Carl from Up and Neo from The Matrix would help explain this, but there are many different types of characters. You're going to have a lot of different types of robots during your time. You may be as diametrically opposed as Carl and Neo are from The Matrix during your like a career as a high school student. So it's just important to be able to capture both types of people, if that makes sense. And so in terms of the characters in general, you are the character and you have to figure out what problems you're solving and how you can capture your struggles concisely. So there are characters because it is a story. I also liked there was a yellow balloon, but I photoshopped it out to be the red and blue pill. Yeah. So robotics is a team-oriented program. So while you may be your protagonist, there's still other characters supporting you in that process, right? Carl didn't just save Kevin on his own. Neo didn't survive the Matrix. Neo didn't get himself out of the Matrix. Morpheus and Trinity helped him. So your mentors, the other students on your team, your community, those will be characters who can support you on your journey. Because mentorship is probably one of the most valuable aspects of robotics, period. Like, I stayed involved with the program because of the mentorship. Yeah. Question was, to create a better story, you focus on yourself as the protagonist and the supporting characters give you the spotlight. And so my response to that was, yes, but no. They help you, but you're not competing. They just add to the story that you share. So not too much time on this. Oh, but there also is a setting. So each robotics team comes from a different place. 971 has a unique story. We're in the heart of the Silicon Valley. But that story is almost completely different than Team 3132 in Australia, Thunder Down Under. They had to start an entire continent of FIRST teams. 971 more leverages connections in the Silicon Valley to help other teams grow. But versus 3132, they go out and they're from Australia and they have an entire... Their story is just different than ours because of where they take place. I hope that makes sense. So these questions about the setting can help lead you into creating a more compelling story for judges, sponsors, other important people you have to explain robotics to. So where are you from and what role does that play in shaping your aspirations? So for 971, for example, it's like, we're from Mountain View. This is where Google is. This is like very SparkNotes ugly version of this, but I'm just condensing it for the sake of time and audience. Where are you from and what role does that play in shaping your aspirations? Well, 971's from Mountain View. Google started in Mountain View and Google was one of our sponsors. So we really pride ourselves on creating technologically advanced robots to push the limits of what teams can create in FIRST. So that's part of our story. What is unique about the community you're from? Well, Google, NASA are essentially next door neighbors. So and they are two technological entities that are critically important to science today. So this is how so sponsors are a really big part of the work that 971 does because we are proud of the connections that we can leverage to help other teams. And what can you add to your community that was not in place previously? So this is also like a problem-solving oriented question. Like, for example, The Spartan series was created because there are workshops and they do happen. There's just not one offered by a team like 971. 254 puts on Chessy Champs, but they don't do like an entire workshop day dedicated to what makes them unique. So the Spartan series aims to solve a problem. And so these two questions are more communication based in terms of, oh, this is how I can set myself apart from other people. The third question is oriented to future projects that you want to work on. And then I did like a galaxy image because people are from everywhere. And because each team, I mean, there aren't too many teams where there are two in one high school, so, or one community. So you all represent a unique place. Like I think Otterbots are from Monterey. There's Napa?
Community team out of Napa.
Yeah, that's pretty unique. I don't know, has to be a good story there, right? Two? Yeah, so, and then where's 7419 from? Okay, yeah, cool. I don't know too much about the area, so, but just to give you your own ideas and to throw it back at you. Okay, so now we're getting into the, rhetorical strategies, or this is how I can best orient my life to be a good storyteller. And who doesn't like SpongeBob? So the rhetorical triangle is something that I mentioned in previous presentations, but essentially there are three aspects to how you tell your story. Rhetoric is essentially how you do that. There's the credibility of the speaker. So for me, for example, I've been a mentor. I've been involved in FIRST for 7 years. That's a third of my life. So I have some credit. I've won several chairman's awards. I've helped mentors win Woody Flowers Awards. I'm a campus ambassador. I'm trained to tell stories. So yeah, that's where my credibility comes from. Tone and style, that's something you can edit later. Logic, so this is the structure of your argument. This is the actual content. This is what you focus on. And then the pathos is the emotional. This is the connection. And then stories are kind of part of that, but that's more of like what this should really say is why it sort of matters in an emotional context. The logic is like all the statistics and all the hard stone cold facts, but in our stories, this will be how did this impact this person? Did they go on to become a mechanical engineer? Were they the first person in their family to go on to engineering? Or what did they do with their degree? And then how did this impact X person? Yes?
So as you're presenting this, is what you're saying that when a person is developing their story to consider these three factors, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is to really think about where's my credibility coming from, what's the logic behind my argument, and then where am I finding the emotional connection. Oh, and then I kind of break down all three aspects of the triangle. This is something I learned in my internship. I worked for a marketing firm this summer, but essentially there are 8 steps to success that help people get to where they are. I just liked them because they were very concise and they are applicable to everything. Yeah.
So we should use these 6 steps to success to kind of tell a better story?
This is more for you in the process of story writing. Having a great attitude, not being discouraged when you can't quite find the words or figure out the way to do this. This is just applicable to everything. Being on time, setting yourself up as a professional, that adds to your credibility. So these also apply to the 3 aspects of the triangle, right? So 1, have a great attitude is probably more emotional. Being on time, that's your credibility. 3, being prepared, that's probably your logic, right? Like do you have the tools equipped to do X, Y, and Z? Make the most out of your time, being productive. That's probably a credibility thing, but And then setting your objectives appropriately, like if you're a first-year team, for example, earning an award like the Chairman's. How many of you know what the Chairman's Award is? Sorry, do most people know? Okay, well, essentially, the Chairman's Award is the highest honor you can receive in FIRST. There's a 10,000 character essay you write. There's a video you create, and then there's a 10-minute student presentation with questions from the judges. It's the highest honor you can receive in FIRST. It essentially recognizes a role model team for their work and their accomplishments in the community. So the outreach you do, the teams you help, and why you help them, and engaging sponsors. That's a whole separate talk. But yeah, so just setting your objectives appropriately. Like if you're a first-year team, your goal might not be to win chairmans, but you can win another award. Or for a sponsor, for example, like you don't want to just, oh, Ferrari has never sponsored a FIRST team before, so let's go and try and make them a sponsor. It's more like, oh, there are probably some other, you could find, or find NASA, for example. They sponsor a lot of FIRST teams. Let's try and get the NASA grant. So just making this small short-term goals. Step 6, maintaining attitude. So that's like if your prototype doesn't work, that's you not getting frustrated and just rolling with the punches. Step 7, know why you are here and what you are here for. Focusing on why. Why are you doing robotics? Well, what's your purpose? Like, what do you want to get out of your program? And then step 8 is take control. So if you see, like when the teacher raises the hand and is like, oh, can I get a volunteer to help take out the trash, and nobody says anything? Well, you don't want to be that person. You want to be the person that says, yeah, and then volunteers for it. So that's kind of the example of take control. But these are just useful life skills. I am not a perfect representative of all 8 of them all the time, but I do my best. Okay, so just more about the actual content of storytelling. The golden thread is your theme. The golden thread is your step 7. Like, it's a clear and concise way of communicating your mission. It's present through every paragraph. It's obvious in the way that you talk to a judge. Here are 3 mediums you can use. So you want to weave them throughout the essay. I like it's a golden thread is just more than a thesis, because the word thesis is just kind of overdone. I liked the emphasis of a golden thread, just something and I liked the imagery of weaving. Does that make any sense? So you want it throughout whatever you're writing. The physical face-to-face, that's just you communicating that physically and with your emotions, with your hands and your body language. Video, that's still like an emotional connection, more creative way of explaining that. But it's just more than a thesis. It's the lifeblood of your work. So this is just a little bit about body language and communicating, because most of what we get from people is from our body language. So the better you are at being able to read that, the more it's just a useful skill in general, because understanding people can be complicated. So just because sometimes the things that people aren't telling you are more important than what they're actually saying. And assuming the sale, that's another like sales type trick. It's just assuming that you're going to get, just not even hesitating in that you are going to receive what you are looking for. And then eliminating verbal tics, likes, it's very challenging. You just have to speak slowly. People don't realize that those words like and come out when your mind is working faster than your words can come out. So the more you take time to pause and just think about what you want to say next, the more likely you are to eliminate those words from your vocabulary or diction. So now this slide is about recruitment. So now we're going back to the 3 aspects of the triangle. These were more just tips, and the golden thread is important. It comes back in the end. But now we're going to go into the 3 aspects of the rhetorical triangle. So recruitment, how do you actually get people involved in your team who could be good at telling this story. They add to the emotional impact that your team takes in its journey. So students who are just naturally passionate are really excellent. You can even find students who are experienced in speech and debate, journalism, drama, or sports. They can be really good because they may not have actually considered a field in engineering prior to you introducing them to it. So that's also a particularly moving, can be a particularly moving story. I never thought I could be an engineer, but because I met Bob on team 4, I can actually do that. Looking at parents, so do you know any adults who have experience telling stories, or grant writing, lawyers, people who write for a living, anybody, even just anybody? Like any sort of additional mentorship you can find that's not in a technical area is useful. So any sort of like additional resources you can find are helpful. And yeah, there are minimum barriers to entry to this. There are less barriers to entry than actually doing the robot. You just have to be literate and determined. And now to add to your logic. So this is the content. This is the bare bones content of what you're going to create. You can start with a list of outreach. So that's the list of people that you impacted. Team demographics, scholarships, sponsors. In terms of actually communicating the story that robots take, you can start with a list of all the different prototypes you had, how long it took you to CAD, strategies you used to CAD, just essentially just starting off with bare bones ideas of what it is you actually created. You could also ask yourself, people and other members of your team, oh, what did you enjoy this season? Like if there was a moment that sparked joy, like Marie Kondo, does this spark joy? Then you can capture all of those little moments, right? And that helps add to the cohesion of the story in general. Yes. Yes, so the question is, what scenarios do these look like? I'll show pictures at the end, because I can do that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll show pictures at the end, 100%. Oh, and so this is just an example of what this looked like for 971 at one point. Like, oh, these are all the things we did. These are how many hours we spent working on it. And then these are the total hours we did. And then these are all the people we impacted because of it. And then just having that big giant number at the end, because it's like, oh wow, we did all these things we didn't realize we did, and now, oh, we have a big impact. And then I think a list like this exists in some form for every team. Yes?
How do you calculate the people?
So for this kind of spreadsheet, do you guys make it specific to specific students on like how many hours each student has impacted, or do you guys generalize that as a team?
Oh, so we usually find if we don't have an exact number, like, oh, we know that 2 people did the interview for ABC Channel 7 News. And then we multiply how long that took by the hours we spent doing it. And then that gives you the total amount of hours. Does that make sense? And so it's just asking the people who were there and keeping a record of, oh, these people went to this demo. And now just to the credibility aspect of the triangle. FIRST does have certain definitions that they use if you're talking about, if you're discussing outreach and awards with them, then you want to make sure you follow those definitions just to be as accurate and precise as possible, just because that adds to your credibility when you're discussing this with other teams and the judges themselves. And then this is just being 100% sure that you followed all the definitions properly. Because you don't want to win an award that you didn't really earn. Cool. Oh, okay, so now we're on to the fun part. Is like, just why all of these things matter and why you want to be good at actually doing this. And why you just want to be good at this entire process in general of, I have a story I need to tell, I need people to tell it. This is all the stuff we did, robot, outreach, both, and then putting it together. Did that kind of sum up what we covered through in the how? Yes. Oh, were you saying yes? Okay, perfect. So now we're going to go into the fun part, is why all this stuff matters. At the end of the day, people will not remember what you said, they'll just remember how you said it. This is something I tell all of our students, just because robotics is there's so many, like, we spend 8 weeks building a robot. There are maybe 10 to 20 plus people on your team who all had a different experience. So just remembering the people that you were talking to in terms of judges or any potential sponsors, they only remember the passion and the eloquence and the entire path that your story took. They're not gonna remember, they may remember the details of like, I had this prototype that didn't necessarily work too well, but they're gonna remember, wow, this person learned a lot, and this program has a huge impact on what students and our community can do. And so keeping that in mind, that the details, they matter in terms of like, what does my entire tapestry look like, but it's really your passion and emotion in your particular story that matters the most. And just and getting that across as best you can. I also think storytelling is really important to be an inclusive society. Because we all, like, I'm from Southern California, and this is the Bay Area, and so I am just by nature different. And the better you can be at putting together all these different types of people, the more colors there are in the world, right? Like, diversity it would just be boring if all the birds looked the same and there was only one color of flower. But because storytelling lets us weave all of this together, we can capture the colors and the different types of people. I also talk about Star Trek. Does anybody know Star Trek? Yeah, so Spock is the logic-oriented guy. Kirk is emotional, and he lives for like how he feels and what he wants. And they go back to the Rhetorical Triangle, right? Like, they represent the 3 aspects of the triangle. Like, Spock is the logic, Kirk is the emotion, and Dr. McCoy is the instinct, credibility aspect to it. Because he's always trying to stop Kirk from doing things he shouldn't do. But the 3, it's not just one of them that gets them across the galaxy, right? It's all 3 of them in combination working together. And the story is about the 3 of them working together to study the universe. And that's just the way storytelling is. It's all these different people working together to accomplish some goal, just like in robotics. And then this is just also to represent like, there are many different types of people on your team. And being able to craft that story is a place people can fit in robotics. You do not have to be an engineer to work on a robotics team. I struggled with that for a long time. Like, I'm not an engineer, what am I doing here? But I finally just became in touch with this. I can add my own flavor to robotics. So even if you find out at some point that engineering's not for you, that's totally fine, because you gained a huge amount of skills in the entire process. And that's just another iteration of your story. Cool. And then you want to be able to tell stories so that other people can tell your story. So at the end of an event, when you win an award, the judges essentially write a script for you about why you won a certain award. And so you want to be able to make sure that they can tell your story, because that's kind of that's kind of how the world works. Stories are passed on from generation to generation, and they can do that. We can do that in our own small scale too. But you just want to be able to make sure that your meanings didn't get lost, and that other people can share them too, because that's where the power in it lies, is when it's passed on. And then you just want to be able to celebrate all of the cool and amazing things that you guys did together, because like that's Travis, and he's a mentor on 971, but that's Travis here too. And like just being able to capture huge amounts of people's lives and what they can do together, that's part of being able to tell the story. Because all these people ended up somewhere, but that's partly because of what we did together on a robotics team. So I just enjoy capturing these moments of like, yes, the robots are cool and they do cool things, but it's really all of the work that you did to put into building the community you have. And so just telling that story is what stays with people, not necessarily like the cool flippy robots. But that's my story. I love Keanu Reeves. Thank you. If you have any questions, I can stick around. But
I'm Ethan Stone. I'm a student on Team 971. We hope you enjoyed this video. For more videos and resources, please subscribe and visit our website at frc971.org.